Welcome to the award-winning Tough Girl podcast, now celebrating 10 years. I'm Sarah Williams, and every week I bring you stories from women in the world of adventure and physical challenge. Get inspired, stay motivated, and be part of a movement that's increasing the visibility of female role models, especially in relation to adventure and endurance. New episodes every Tuesday at 7 a.m. UK time. Support the mission at patreon.com/Tough Girl Podcast and dive deeper at toughgirlchallenges.com.
My name is Dr. Sarah Ruggins. I am an investment professional based here in the UK and have been for the last 10 years, but I'm actually Canadian. And for the last 2.5 years, I have been learning how to ride a bike.
Oh, and that has led you to some phenomenal places because you've done some epic challenges, which we are going to be talking about, obviously, in detail. But let's get back to childhood then. So you never learned how to ride a bike in childhood?
Well, I did have a bike when I was a child, like most children, especially, growing up in Canada. We were a very active family. So I did have a bike and I did ride it. But when I was quite young, I actually developed quite a strong focus in another sport, in track and field. And my focus in that developed quite strictly growing up as I became more competitive. So I didn't actually ride a bike that much beyond, my younger years. Everything kind of became focused on my one sport in running.
And with that focus, and you said the word strictly, was that you driving this, or was this sort of family pressure to run the track and the field?
Great question. Yeah, we see a lot of family pressure, I think, with younger athletes, but I was really fortunate that my family always encouraged us to strive and to be our best, but they also supported us when we did not want to do something, as long as we kind of gave it our best effort first. So I was in a really fortunate position where my family encouraged me to find my limits, push myself, work with some of the best coaches in the area, but was never overbearing about it, and ultimately the decision making over my future in the sport rested with me, which I'm extremely grateful for now.
And what was the sport? What was the distance, or what was the race?
So I did several different distances. So I held national records in 3 different distances, and more middle distance. So anything really from 800 meters to 10,000 meters. I progressed most in the 1,500 meter and usually about the 10,000 meters. So I achieved a Commonwealth Games qualifying time, was preparing for Junior Olympics, and I was one of the youngest athletes in history to achieve world qualifying standard in those distances by the time I was 14, 15.
Holy hell!
Yeah.
You were definitely sporty as a child. Wow, that's intense. Were you dreaming of the Olympics?
Yeah, my entire identity from the time I was a young woman and my sense of worth and all of my activities were really pointed towards representing my country at the highest level, which was fantastic for motivation and for instilling a sense of, athletic discipline in my life from a very young age. However, that also made me incredibly vulnerable, when I was injured or when training got derailed. It really rocked my world in a negative way. So that was something I really had to contend with from a young age. But yeah, Olympics was very much my future, my dream. I had started training with an Olympic coach. So yeah, I was just really grateful for that time in my life where I could experience that.
So 14, 15, to be fair, it's so long ago now, but puberty,
Yeah.
teenage years, all the fun that comes with that. What sort of happened during the teenage years? Did you continue to sort of identify with being an athlete, with going after the Olympics, or did something happen, or did something change?
Yeah, something did change, and quite drastically, actually. So I was about late 15, early 16 years old, and I needed a fairly routine surgery on my feet because I had some torn ligaments and tendons in my feet. But my family and I made the decision with my orthopedic surgeon to do the operation on both my feet at the same time, just so I could recover quickly and then be back on the track. So that would mean I would probably be in a wheelchair for about a month, maybe 6 weeks, just while I recovered. Now, that surgery went well, but what happened after that, I actually developed a disease of my autoimmune system and my nervous system, which over the next few months progressed to me being fully immobilized and in a hospital bed or wheelchair. And that took several years to overcome.
Oh my God, that must have been such a. Yeah, by the way, you do not need to relive any of the trauma of that time period. But
That's fine. I'm an open book. It's I think my story can help others, so I'm happy to share.
but I suppose emotionally going from having your life not necessarily planned out, but big dreams. You're doing every single thing right. Your identity's tied into your sport. You're good. You're great. You're fantastic. You're phenomenal at your sport. Competing at the highest levels. Then making an informed decision with your parents, having the surgery all go super super well, and then having something this autoimmune disease which you have got no control over coming into your life, and then suddenly that's a 180-degree transition. Mentally, that must have just put you, and emotionally, that must have just put you through the ringer. Did you have support? And I suppose back then you yeah, like support available to help you with your mental health?
Yes, so I was fortunate that we had lots of support available. My mother was a huge advocate for me in the healthcare system to ensure that I had what I needed. But to your point, I went from a fully functioning, highly capable, and independent young woman whose life was on a certain trajectory to needing 24/7 care. I couldn't bathe by myself. I couldn't eat by myself. I couldn't move my arms, my hands, or my legs. And I was in debilitating pain. So it required a lot of psychiatric and psychological support. But at the time, I don't think when I was going through it, it didn't feel as mentally traumatic because I was just trying to survive day to day. We didn't quite understand what was happening. So people asked, did you miss running? Were you thinking about getting back to running? No, I was just trying to get through the day. And I found I needed the most support from a mental health perspective. Actually, once I moved through rehabilitation and started, getting some semblance of normalcy back in my life. And that's when it really hit me what I had been through. And it turns out I had developed complex PTSD from the experience. So it took several years of mental health support and physical rehabilitation to kind of get me back to quote unquote a normal life.
Oh, and I suppose also like having to let your dreams go or make different dreams, make new dreams, and that our whole identity piece, identifying as an athlete. And was there a point where, oh God, I suppose what I'm trying to say is like, when did your identity start to change, or when did you start looking in different directions? Because, you're doctor, PhD. When did you start then going more down the academic route?
Correct. Yeah. So when I was coming through my rehabilitation, I had no idea who I was. Everything I thought I was had evaporated, and I knew I could never be that woman again. That version of my life just did not exist for me anymore with my new capabilities. And that was probably one of the most traumatic things, and one of the things that delayed my physical progress the most, because I was really scared to put myself out there, to develop my athleticism, because I knew it wouldn't be the same as what I had before. So comparing my capabilities post-illness to my capabilities pre-illness was a really slippery slope for me, and something that took me years to get over. And one of the ways I got over that was actually just focusing not on athletics, but focusing on academics. So I had to finish my high school degree because I was pulled out of high school. I couldn't finish school with my peers. So I finished that, and then I went on to university, and I got 4 degrees in 4 different subjects. And it was really just a way for me to explore another aspect of my identity and personality that I hadn't really curated in my life before. So I was incredibly grateful for that academic period of my life. And it was only really after I finished my doctorate that I felt confident and trusted my body enough to start athletics again.
Oh, so you got to 4 degrees, 4 different subjects. Hit me with them. What were they?
So I was focused early on international relations and politics, which I found quite interesting. I then moved on and did another undergraduate in economics. My master's degree was in the philosophy of economics. So I looked at the integration of, macroeconomic theory into decision making in periods of disruption. And then my doctorate, and what brought me to the UK at the University of Edinburgh, was financial economics and financial innovation.
So you've got your doctorate, you've been doing all the degrees, you've been focusing on your academics. During that time period, were you still exercising, or was that just a step too far at that point?
For me, it was still a step too far. I was incredibly underweight and still not very healthy. So I lost about 40% of my body weight after the ordeal. So I was incredibly thin. I did not have a lot of strength. So my version of exercise during my academic years was really just walking to and from class. Even this, I still have a lot of balance issues from my illness. So this was even, a struggle for me, but that's the way I really started trusting my body and building that mind-body connection again, was just walking. And then those walks slowly progressed into runs over the space of about maybe 10 years. It took me a really long time to trust my body not to hurt me again. And from there, we started doing strength training. And then I just realized that I am capable, but my capabilities have changed. But just because they're different doesn't mean they're worse. I can exploit those and I can find new avenues to, explore my physicality.
So when did you start thinking about Land's End to John O'Groats? Like, was that something that you've had in mind for quite a long time, and that was a goal that you were working towards? Or was this just something that sort of came more about out of the blue?
Great question. So I competed in the Transcontinental race last year, which is about a 4,500-kilometer bike race, an unsupported race, where we went from France down to Turkey. And I really loved that event and the ethos behind self-supported endurance cycling. But what I didn't like about it was that because it was self-supported, you're your own medical support, you're your own mechanical support. You need to stop and find food and shelter. And I found that just slowed me down. So after the event, I wanted to do something that would help me understand my limits and how far I could ride my bike if my only concern was just riding my bike. So my coach actually had the idea to do Le Joggle, so Land's End, John O'Groats, Land's End, or vice versa. We actually ended up doing John O'Groats, Land's End, back up to John O'Groats, because this would allow me, to do more of a time trial discipline, but it would introduce complexities such as sleep. But I would be fully crewed with a team who could just help me find my limits and how far I could ride a bike.
Oh, I'm loving this. I'm loving this. This is such a fascinating combination because of the your athletic abilities that you've had since a child, and then obviously sort of an interruption, that time period, and then you're focusing on that mind body connection again, and then building up that confidence, and then taking on this challenge to really sort of test your limits. So you said you were working with a coach. Were you working with the coach for the Transcontinental, or had you done previous events before that?
So this record I've just done is technically my third event on a bike. So I did the Transcontinental in 2023. That was not coached. I actually got my first bike after I got into the Transcontinental race and had 5 months to prep. But after that race in 2023, I performed quite well, not knowing what I was doing. So I decided to invest, and I'm somebody who really likes to curate deep focus on activities. So I decided to invest and work with one of the best endurance coaches I could find. And for the last year and a half, I've been working with Rob Lee of RLP Coaching, and he prepped me for Transcontinental last year, and he was, the driving force behind my training protocol for this record attempt as well.
So let's talk about the record attempt, because it's phenomenal and mind-blowing, what you've achieved. So you're sat down with your coach, Rob Lee, you're having this conversation. How long did you give yourself to train, and what did that training, the physical side of training, look like?
Great question. So Transcontinental finished in August. So I would say my training for this record attempt started September, October 2024. And our record completed in early May this year, 2025. So I had, 8 months or so of focused training. And what that really looked like is we went into quite a strong period of reverse periodization into last fall and over the winter, where I wasn't riding very much. I probably didn't do more than 14 hours a week in the saddle, but these sessions were 6 to 7 days a week and really high intensity, focusing on building my FTP, building my power and my max VO2 numbers. And alongside that, I was working with a strength coach, a firm called Catalyst in the area. And what Tony was able to do was work with my coach, Rob, to really program heavy lifting and strength training that complemented what I was doing on the bike. So I was in the gym about 5-6 hours a week, doing heavy lifting, and then on the bike about 14 hours a week during this period. And as we progressed into the spring up to May, when the record attempt was going to happen, on the bike, we eased off on the intensity and then we progressed to volume. So at my peak, I was riding about 28 to 30 hours a week in the saddle at lower intensities and really working on dialing in my aerodynamic position and ensuring that the bike build was correct and I was comfortable on that. And then with my strength training, we backed off on some of the heavy lifting, moved to more volume work as well. And this complemented what we were doing on the bike. So all told, I was up to about 33 to 35 hours a week, some weeks at my peak.
What were you deadlifting?
So I don't do deadlifts, but my squats, I could do 4 reps of 5 at 110 kilos.
Nice.
And when I started working with Tony 2 years ago in strength, I was squatting 45 kilos. So it just shows you the benefit of working with, individuals at the top of their field who can really coach you and get the most out of you. And I think that strength training was integral to me being able to hold higher power for longer on the bike.
You're still working a full-time job, aren't you? You didn't take time off work.
No. I was still working and my job is quite demanding. It's not necessarily a 9 to 5, but it is flexible. So I was really fortunate that I was able to, have some adaptability with that. But every single hour of my life was scheduled from 4 a.m. till 10 p.m., probably about 7 days a week in preparation for this.
So your alarm, you were getting up at 4 a.m.?
I was on the bike at 4 a.m., so I was getting up at 3:30. Yeah.
No. How much sleep were you getting?
I usually be in bed around 9 or 10 every night, so it wasn't much. But for me, that's what was sustainable for me. I was able to do that and still recover appropriately between my sessions. And I knew I could lock in and do that really aggressive schedule because it was for a temporary point in my life. It wasn't sustainable. I knew that would be about 4 to 5 months where, I wouldn't really be able to have a social life. It would just be work and training. And I was just really privileged to have the best coaches and the best friends and family who supported me in that.
And were you supported in, because I also just think of the practical things of sometimes it's just life admin, as in food or laundry or getting ready for work or, did you have a partner helping out with that side of things? Or were you also having to manage your nutrition, or were you able to get your meals sent in? So it's boom, you didn't even have to worry about going grocery shopping and writing a list and, doing all of that sort of stuff, which is still a part of life.
Yeah, no, the life admin was all me. I live alone here. I have a fantastic partner, but he's based elsewhere. So yeah, for groceries, I had them delivered to me. I didn't have the luxury of, getting to go grocery shopping. A lot of ready-made meals, nothing glamorous. But again, it's if you set big goals in your life, and a lot of people want to have big goals, you need to be prepared and fully understand the sacrifices you're going to have to make in pursuit of those goals. So for me, I knew if I needed to upskill to the amount I needed to upskill for this record attempt in May, everything else would have to kind of fall by the wayside. So that was a sacrifice I was comfortable making, but it doesn't mean it was necessarily easy.
The setting of the big goals, I'm personally really fascinated about this, this transition from having the idea, okay, this is what I want to do, then working backwards, putting the people in place, the coaches, etc. But in terms of planning it, like, I just feel as though you're a planner and very organized, but I don't want to make assumptions. What does that look like? Are you vision boards? Are you spreadsheets? Are you writing very clear to-do lists? Like, how do you manage like this schedule and like the logistics of getting everything organized, not only for yourself doing the training and, making that type of commitment, but also getting a team around you, figuring out the route, the logistics of this challenge from John O'Groats to London and back to John O'Groats again?
Yeah, it was a lot. So I'm a planner, I'm a details person, I work in finance, so a spreadsheet like is my best friend. I would say it started for me really sitting down with my coaches and ironing out what the goal was and why we wanted to do that goal, because coming back to the why was integral to kind of remind us why we were working so hard. So once we set our goal, and my advice to everyone who's looking to make big goals is to, make your goal something big enough so that it scares you, because that means you're going to be stretching yourself, right? But be realistic about it as well. It needs to be within your capability set. So number one for me was identifying my goal and then sitting down with my coaches and basically delegating to them to say, I need you guys to progress me to get me to this point by early May. So that portion of my training in my life was delegated to my coaches. Then after that, it became about, okay, well, how do we get the team together and how do we create a narrative over what we're trying to achieve? And for me in my professional life, I build teams. I love building teams. And for me, this event was going to be deeply personal. So I wanted my team to be people who I knew and who I could trust making decisions on my welfare and on that would impact our success of the record. So I pulled together a range of personalities, almost none of which were cyclists, because I believed that, having interdisciplinary subject matter experts could problem solve more effectively than a group of cyclists could. So I brought together individuals from finance, individuals from marketing, individuals from PR, and then we had our filmmaking team and our photography company as well come together. And we started training. Basically, we would sit down for planning calls and we would meet about once a month, once every 2-3 weeks for practice sessions with the vehicles, understanding how that would work. And then we would, work together to come up with the nutrition plans and also the social media and marketing engagement plans. And once we had our pitch decks together of what we were going to achieve, how we were going to achieve it, we then went out to sponsors to try to get product support and support that would help us drive the narrative. So we were very successful in doing that. And it was a privilege to bring together some of my favorite people to deliver this.
So this is so interesting because I used to work in banking many, many years ago.
Oh, okay.
And just some of the words that you're using, like pitch decks and stuff. And I'm like, oh, I mean, part of me is like cringing a
Triggered.
little. Yeah, like cringing just like a little bit. But also it just reminds me of just getting things done and just, like pulling people together, building up that team, having these like practice sessions and these different plans for the nutrition and the social media, and then getting the pitch. And it was literally just, and part of me's like, no wonder you were successful. Like this is how you do it, which is, yeah, I'm just smiling inside.
Yeah. I mean, you can't when you do these things, they're public and I was very clear that we were trying to set a precedent for women in sport. Like this would be a history making ride. So we cannot mess this up. And I understand that there's a big deal of, probability, chance, and luck, especially when it comes to weather. But our team's ethos going into this was, if we can plan for it, we are going to plan for it. We are going to maximize our probabilities of success. And we were the most organized team I think I've ever seen. So we had every single base covered. We left no stone unturned because we wanted to maximize our probability of success. And when we were on the start line, I wanted every single person, including myself, to be confident that there was not one more thing we could have done to prepare.
I love it. This is a blueprint for how adventure, or in my opinion, how adventures and challenges should be done.
Yeah.
But I do want to go back to that why though, and I'm not sure we fully delved into it. We might have what was your why? What was your driver? Like the deep rooted one? And you must have had like multiple reasons why, but so that, every time you've had a tough training session or, you're squatting these, 110 kilograms and you've had a really tough day at work or things haven't gone to plan and you're just like, no, actually I do have to set my alarm for 3:30 a.m. I've got to get up at 4. I've got to get on that bike even though my bottom might be sore or whatever. Going back to the why, I'd love for you to share more about that.
Yeah, so I think probably the most truthful why for me is this event was a gift to myself, and it was a way for me, I suppose, to re-enter that feeling of discomfort, that feeling of, pain, but from a place of power and control. Because when I was sick, it was just something happening to me, right? I couldn't control it. And people would say, oh, you're so brave, you're so tough. But I didn't really have a choice. Whereas this time, I wanted to do something that would force me to be brave and be tough, but I would be coming at it from a place of power. So for me, the why was a gift to myself to demonstrate to myself my own resilience and hopefully in turn and in doing this publicly, even though when there was a big risk of failure, inspire others to keep pushing. If they're going through a difficult time and they can't see a way out, there's always a way out. It just, you just need to find the path forward.
Yeah. So let's go to the start line. You're at the start line and, with the planning and preparation that you've done, you are on that start line confident. Are you? Were you?
Completely.
Yeah.
Completely. In the last 9 months leading up to the challenge, I have never missed one single training session. I've never cut a ride 1 minute short. So I knew I had full trust in my coaches and in myself. And I knew essentially what I was about to experience on the road. And I was confident that I could handle that.
So setting off, like, I suppose not like when did reality set in, but what were the stats of what did you know that you needed to maintain speed wise in order to get the record? Because you must have had markers and points along the way. And you're also doing this, I think, on like public roads as well, traffic. Oh, I'm a bit scared, but yeah, talk us through the ride of what you can remember from setting off at the start and like what speeds that you were getting up to and I've so many questions and the safety and this and that. but yeah, just talk us about the actual the riding.
So while the record was what we anchored to as an objective, actually, when it came to what I was looking at and how I was planning the ride, I didn't know or want to know where I was versus the record until the last day because it was irrelevant to me. What was relevant to me was riding within my capabilities and riding intuitively. So I wasn't riding to speed. I actually just worked in blocks of 4 hours and I worked in terms of power, tracing the power that I was riding on the bike. And I would look to my heart rate, though that became less reliable from like day 4 onwards. And beyond that, I didn't care where I was versus the record. I cared about managing my process. So power, heart rate, and literally what was on the road 10 meters ahead. And beyond that, I didn't care. And the philosophy behind that is if I rode to my capabilities and I managed my process well, on the last day when my team told me where I was versus the record, if I was strong enough, we'd have a shot. And if I wasn't strong enough, that's fine. I still rode to my best ability. So the record was really a distraction.
How were you fitting in breaks? How were you fitting in food and sleep? Like, what was your strategy for that?
Yeah, so the way my team managed me is we rode in blocks of 4 hours. So I would ride 4 hours and then I would be off the bike for 10 minutes. And we called these 10 minutes pit stops because I wanted the team operating like an F1 team. So 10 minutes did not mean 11 minutes. It meant 10 minutes. So when I would come in, my mechanic would, take the bike from me, do a bike check. While he was doing that, I would have time to go to the loo. And then I would sit on the massage table for sports massage and be eating solid foods while that was occurring. So by the time I went to the loo and sat on the massage table, I probably had about 5 minutes to eat about 1,500 calories while I was getting massaged. So that's what those 10-minute breaks look like. While I was eating, my crew chief, who's also my partner, Ryan, would give me a brief on the next 4 hours and what the road ahead and weather looked like. And then just for eating, I suppose, and nutrition, I didn't just eat in those 10-minute blocks. I was eating constantly throughout the 4 hours as well. I was trying to average about 400 calories an hour while I was riding. And the way we did this was through, I worked with Precision Fuel and Hydration, and I used a lot of their carb products. So they have carb chews that are good. I was also able to tolerate bagels with cream cheese for some reason. That became like my favorite thing. And Mars bars as well. And that combined with about 10 liters of electrolytes every 24-hour period is what got me through.
How is your body responding to this in terms of like your leg muscles, your bottom, like how that was doing, but also your stomach and your gut?
I find there's 3 phases when you're doing endurance work on the bike. The first phase is usually like the first 36 hours where everything feels great. You feel like a greyhound that's just been let out of the gate and like you're indestructible. And then phase 2 is where everything hurts and you've kind of hit this pain wall that you need to push through. And for me, this started about halfway through on day 2, and I got just excruciating pain in my hips and in my glutes. And it took me in really heavy legs, and it took me about 24 hours to work through this period. And it got to the point where my legs were so seized that my team actually had to lift me on and off the bike because I couldn't lift my legs. But I worked through that. I kept going. My team upped my carb intake to about 100 grams an hour for that next 24-hour period. And that was able to fix the problem. And then I entered phase 3 of the endurance journey, which is where you feel like you can go forever. And you've pushed through that pain gate and your body just accepts that this is what it does now. And riding became as easy as breathing air.
Oh, I love that. So two words that you used there was, going through the pain wall and then going through the pain. So the pain wall is when you're entering that 24 hours of utter hell, when you're having to work through this period. And then you said about going through the pain gate, where it's something like, this is what we do now. Riding is as easy as breathing. But I do think that going through pain, whether it's a wall or a gate, there is a mind-body connection. Mentally, what is going on in your head, if anything was going on in your head? Like, could you try and talk us through sort of, mentally the highs, the lows, the self-talk that you were having?
Yeah. So mentally, when you're in pain, a lot of people's instinct is to panic and dial back, but your mind is just trying to keep you safe. So it's telling you to stop, right? And I knew I would be feeling this pain. I knew it was normal that my legs would really struggle to walk. They really struggled to do anything except pedal after day 2. So I understood that this is what would be happening. So it didn't panic me. And what I developed really to get through this, to get through the discomfort of constant eating, was basically a 3-part mantra. So it was focus, discipline, and gratitude. And so focus really meant focusing on my process. So that was my power, my heart rate, and the road ahead. Discipline meant, we stick to our 10-minute breaks. I stick to my aero position. I ride as efficiently as possible. And gratitude was just reflecting that even though if I'm in pain or I'm uncomfortable or there's heavy traffic and it's making me nervous, I have a whole team around me and I have a body that's capable of doing this. So this is a celebration. This isn't something to complain about. And that kind of 3-part mantra allowed me to just keep focusing on my process instead of, discomfort or environmental factors around me, which would ebb and flow. And I just treated those like distractions.
Looking back now, you have had some time to process, but while you're out on that, what was your biggest challenge to overcome? What was the number one thing that maybe that you, I mean, obviously you planned for everything, but did anything come up that you hadn't planned for that you needed to handle, or did everything go to plan?
I would say everything went to plan. Nutrition, what surprised me is I stopped really being able to tolerate a lot of solid foods by the start of day 3. So we switched to predominantly liquid nutrition in the form of Huel shakes that were laced with carb drink mix. It sounds horrific, but it worked. So that was a bit of a surprise, but we were prepared. We had all the, nutrition support there. We were supported by Huel for that, which was fantastic. But I would say probably the most difficult thing for me, it was anticipated, thankfully, but was the sleep deprivation, and dealing with the cognitive impact of that, and also the impact it had on my team and trying to manage me through that.
I believe you did have quite a sort of challenging experience on the Thursday night, which was due to the sleep deprivation. Do you remember what happened there, or did the team explain to you what happened like after you'd finished?
They explained to me what happened. The lights were on, but no one was home that night. So essentially, what happened by the night of day 4, so overnight day 4 into day 5, I think I had less than 4 hours sleep at that point. I was going for, over 97 hours with just a few hours off the bike. And what that really culminated with was confusion. So I actually, on that night, I forgot why I was riding a bike and I forgot where I was and I thought I was lost. So I remember going on my team comms and being like, I'm feeling scared. I don't know where I am or why I'm doing this. And the team was incredible. They knew that this was a side effect of sleep deprivation, so they were prepared. They were able to just get in my ear and talk to me and be like, you're not lost. We're right here. You're right on pace. Just keep doing exactly what you're doing. But then over the next few hours, while I kind of made peace with that and I was still going, I started falling asleep while riding my bike and I was weaving, into the center line. So the team had to keep laying on the horn to wake me up so I could stay in my lane. And it kind of culminated in the early hours of, night 4, morning of day 5. I actually lost consciousness and crashed into a nettle bush, apparently. So the team had to take me off the bike. And I went into hypoglycemic shock. So they had to give me glucose under my tongue, give me a lot of caffeine, shine a very bright blue light in my eyes to wake me back up and basically just get me pumped up and get me back out on the bike. And it was incredibly difficult for them because they were forcing somebody they loved to do something that was incredibly difficult. But we spoke before the event that this was probably going to happen and I wouldn't thank them if they let me rest. I would thank them for getting me to the finish line. And that's exactly what they did.
Oh, I'm getting emotional because seeing someone you love being in pain is never a nice experience, even when you know that they are doing something that, like you're going after this record that they want to do and you're having to, I mean, obviously you've had all the conversations, but you're having to force them, to wake them up. And it also must have been quite scary for them as well, like seeing you in this position, but also knowing that you'd had these conversations before. One of the things that you said is the record was almost a distraction and you didn't really want to know about it until the final day.
Mm.
So when that final day came and when your team told you, what did they tell you? Were you ahead? Were you behind? Were you on track? And how much time did you have left?
Yeah, so when they told me, they basically said I had started off with just over 200 kilometers lead over the male record. And due to that setback overnight on day 4, I think that had dropped slightly to about 165 kilometers, maybe like 175 kilometers. But they said I had a lot of time. That was about 7 hours. So even though for the last 300 miles we were facing significant and quite severe headwinds going up the north of Scotland, they said just stick to your process. You're absolutely fine. You have tons of time. And so basically that just kept me calm because at that point I was really on thin ice physically. And I wasn't in pain really, but my body needed sleep. And I was starting to just, fray a little bit cognitively. So they were just focused on, controlling my body temperature, controlling my nutrition. And I was just focused on maintaining my power, getting through that headwind and getting to the finish line. So it felt good to know we were so far ahead, but we absolutely did not count our chickens before they were hatched because 100 miles is not that big a lead when you're talking about, 1,900 miles. So we didn't celebrate until we crossed the finish line.
Oh, I mean, what was it like reaching? Were you compass mentis at that point? Was there any feelings of joy, or was it just pure relief, or was it just nothing and just actually you just closed your eyes and fell asleep and fell off the bike?
It was the first feeling I felt was just relief. So my team captain, who's also my partner, Ryan, was the one who kind of caught me in the bike at the end when I finished in John O'Groats. And I remember just collapsing and just sobbing and just feeling just pure relief because you have to keep your emotions locked in for 5.5 days. And the focus that I had for 5 days was probably unparalleled to anything I've ever experienced in my life. And just knowing I finally, could relax. It was a release like I've never felt before. And the whole team was there. And I think all of us were sobbing. And we took photos and then they all jumped in the ocean to celebrate. And I went to just sit down and try to sleep. So it was a perfect finish. And I don't think I really felt joy until the next day when I could actually process what had happened.
Oh, I hope they've caught that on camera as well, because it sounds very movie-esque, like collapsing and finishing the ride. I mean, you destroyed the records, like just absolutely. It's mind-boggling what you've done. 2,700 kilometers, 5 days, 11 hours and 14 minutes. And you broke not only the woman's record, but the man's record by 7 hours.
Yeah.
Has it sunk in yet?
Yeah, I mean, I'm grateful that we set out, to do exactly what we said we were going to do. And I think for me, while we anchored to the record, because the men's record, because that would allow me to find my limits, for me, it was never really about breaking the record. It was about finding my own limits physically and mentally. And so I'm just delighted that I was able to ride within my capabilities and achieve that for myself. And I think the record is just kind of the icing on top. And if I'm being honest, I'm like completely overwhelmed in a positive way, but by the amount of attention this has received. And I think it's important, and I think it sends a strong message about women in sport, and especially male-dominated sports, that we can take up space. But for me, the record was always secondary. It was more about, can I find my limits, and what does that look like?
And let's dig into that. Have you found your limits, or do you think there's what's limit wise? What are you thinking? Uh, it feels ridiculous to me to even say, have you got more in you after what you have just accomplished? Where are you with finding your limits?
I think I've just found the start of them, to be fair. I think this is just the start. And with every event that I've done, I've only done 3, but it's a learning process. So now that I've gone through this event, if I were to do it again, I could do it faster. I know I could, but that's not the point. The point is I'm going to take my learnings and what I've experienced and how I've moved through that sleep deprivation and that nutrition strategy, and I'm going to apply that to new projects, because I think, iterative improvements and developments is really motivating to me. So I found my limits in the context of this event, but I think in finding those limits, I've learned a lot more that will help me push them moving forward. And I'm genuinely so excited.
Oh, I'm excited. I'm world record, cycle around the world. With recovery, you are undoubtedly putting your body through so much, not the sleep deprivation, the fueling, the physicality of the undertaking. How did you recover well? Did you recover quickly? When did you get back on a bike again?
Yeah, I think I recovered really well, actually. And I think there's probably a correlation between the volume you're doing before the event and how quickly you recover. So because I can tolerate quite high volume, my recovery rate is quite quick. So the way my recovery strategy looked is, after the event, I took about 5 days off where I didn't really do any physical activity. I was just focused on walking. I couldn't even really stretch because my whole body had just essentially become a brick. It was so tight. But then after 5 days, I went back to the gym and I was just working on very simple stretching, just trying to get mobility in my neck and back, in my legs. And I did that for a few days. And then I had my first ride about a week and a half after the event. And I felt quite emotional. I cried, if I'm being honest, because I felt just not really ready to be back training, even though it felt fine physically. So I actually ended up taking 2 weeks off the bike, but delighted to say after 2 weeks, I'm now back on the bike. I'm riding 7 days a week. I'm in the gym 4 days a week again, and I'm feeling about 90% recovered physically. So it's been a quick return back to activity, but also one that's been, well reasoned and paced.
Yeah. And at the same time, as well as getting the record, you're also raising significant funds. You raised over £15,000 for two of the two charities. Would you like to share more about the two charities that you're raising funds for?
I would be delighted to. Yes, it's one of my favorite topics. So we were really privileged to have relationships with the Bike Project and Bikes for Refugees. So the latter serves Scotland and the former serves England. And what these two charities do is they take used bikes and they refurbish them and they distribute them to refugees and asylum seekers entering the UK. And the reason their services are so required, I mean, some of them have wait lists of up to 6 months to a year, is that when refugees and asylum seekers come into the country, they have no subsidized public transit. And for some of them, they're actually not able to get jobs. They're not allowed to work. And some of these individuals need to survive on less than £10 a week. So they literally cannot afford public transit. And so these two organizations provide bicycles, and they're a critical lifeline to these individuals getting to language lessons, getting to their appointments, getting to food banks, getting their kids to school. And they really provide a sense of community and empowerment to newcomers to the UK. So, at the time of filming this, I think we're just shy of £20,000 for these organizations, which I hope will be transformative to them over the next year.
Oh, absolutely incredible. It definitely will be. And Sarah, where are you most active on social media? How can people be kept up to date with you, your future challenges? I know you've also filmed it. So when the film and all of that good stuff comes out, where are you most active?
So I am most active on Instagram. My handle is my name, Sarah Ruggins. So quite easy to find. And there will be a feature-length documentary coming out probably early 2026. So we'll be doing, a global film festival circuit and hopefully be on some streaming platforms as well. We're working with an award-winning documentary team who's actually won the Banff Film Festival a few years ago. So I'm really excited about that. And all the trailers and announcements will be coming through my Instagram page.
Fantastic. I'll make sure that I share the links to your Instagram so that people can be kept updated. But Sarah, I'd love you to have the final words of advice, final words of wisdom for other women out there who want to take on their own personal challenges. Apart from just do it, what words of advice would you like to share?
I think the words of advice that most resonate with me and hopefully with others is that understand what is most important to you, curate an objective around that, and work backwards from that and break it down into bite-sized pieces, and be prepared to demonstrate something I call aggressive patience in pursuit of your goals. You're not going to make life change overnight. It's going to take years if your goals are big enough. So be comfortable with that, be patient with yourself, and focus on small wins every day, and you'll be able to achieve exactly what you want.
Oh, I love that. Aggressive patience. That is very, very powerful. Sarah, massive congratulations on your new world record. Thank you so much for coming on the Tough Girl podcast and sharing all about it. You are such an inspiration. And honestly, I'm just so excited to see what the next challenge, what the next adventure is going to be.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, tribe. I really hope you enjoyed that episode with Dr. Sarah. Wow. What an achievement. Like what she put her body and her mind through to achieve this goal is absolutely inspiring. And I, for one, cannot wait for this film to go live in 2026. It's going to be incredible to watch that journey unfold. There are just so many incredible women going after so many incredible challenges. The fact we talked about Lael Wilcox as well. Lael has actually been on the Tough Girl podcast previously, so please do go and listen to her episode. But her going after the men's around the world record, again, absolutely absolutely inspiring. Big shout out, to all the badass women out there who are challenging themselves, who are pushing themselves, who are stepping outside the comfort zone. Because this is what the Tough Girl podcast is about. It's about motivating and inspiring you to take on your own personal challenges, the challenges that excite you, that make you a little bit nervous and a little bit scared, but in a good way, as in it's going to test you. It means you're going to grow and develop as a person by taking on these tougher challenges. So make sure you do step outside of your comfort zone. If you are looking for more inspiration, there is now over 800 episodes of the Tough Girl podcast available for you to listen to. And we do have a resources page, because I know when there's like 800 episodes, it's like, where do I even start? So if you visit the website, toughgirlchallenges.com, on the website, there's a dedicated resources section. So if you're passionate about cycling, running, triathlon, I'm literally like, what else can you be passionate about? Ocean rowing, polar explorers, mountaineering, climbing, swimming. We have a whole host of women who've shared their stories on the Tough Girl podcast. So please start on those resources pages, and then listen to these episodes and pick and choose, what can you apply to your life, to the challenge that you're taking on. Every woman is different. Every life is different. It's about figuring out what is going to work for you and your lifestyle. There's also no comparison between challenges as well. The only person that you compare against is who you were and how you're growing and developing as a person. So massive congratulations again to Dr. Sarah for this phenomenal record, like just an absolutely amazing achievement. Everything that we have talked about today will be available in the show notes at toughgirlchallenges.com. So please do go and check it out. The Tough Girl podcast is supported by the incredible patrons So if you want to increase the amount of female role models in the media, then please do visit Patreon, patreon.com/toughgirlpodcast. You can sign up as a monthly patron or an annual patron, or just make one-off donations via PayPal. It really does make a massive difference having a source of income coming in. I want to continue producing these episodes, new episodes every Tuesday, with bonus episodes coming out on a Thursday. I want to increase the amount of stories of women in the adventure and challenge and endurance space. And we are doing that, with over 800 episodes. And recently you've probably seen that the Tough Girl podcast celebrated its 10th year anniversary, 10 years of the Tough Girl podcast. And if you want to learn more about what I've been up to over the past sort of 6 months and talk more about the GR20, then I have just released a solo episode that came out yesterday on the 4th of August at 7 p.m. So during the solo episodes, I sort of dig deep into what I've been going through over the past 6 months. I talk about money, health, challenges, how they've gone, and what the next sort of 6 months are going to look like. And I also answer questions from the Tough Girl Tribe. The Tough Girl Tribe is the closed Facebook community that I run for patrons and for guests of the Tough Girl podcast. You can learn more about that via Patreon. All that's left for me to say is, wherever you are, whatever you are doing, give it your all. Give it 110%. Get after it. Go for it. Believe in yourself, because I believe in you. Take care. Lots of love, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.